from the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Welcome to the North Idaho College Public Forum. Our subject today involves the study and possible planning and construction of what are called community convention centers or event centers. And one of the questions that always arises for our communities that are in our viewing audience, when has a community reached the size that it needs such a site to where 4 or 5 or 6 or 8,000 people can convene at one site for conventions or different events both in that community and visitors to that community, in addition to the general assemblies, having breakout sessions or facilities for banquets and so forth. Kootenai County citizens have been going through a study recently to ask that particular question for our community, and we're very happy to have on our program a member of that committee to talk in 2 ways about this issue. First of all, some advice and recommendations for other communities that might be starting such a study that has just been completed in Kootenai County. And then second, we will talk about the particular plan that is proposed for our community. To do that, I welcome to the program our friend Norm Gissel, who is an attorney in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and a very, very activist within our community. He has served on many boards with great time and devotion to them. He presently serves as vice chair of the Board of Trustees at North Idaho College. He's also the former chair of the Coeur d'Alene Library Board, where he served for many years, and along with others was really responsible for saving the city library. He's also been for many years on the Board of Directors of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, where he is also the immediate past president of that organization and devotes a lot of time to human rights. Norm, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and we thank you for coming and talking about yet another subject that's dear to your heart.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about a subject that's as important as this one is.
And I'm very pleased to welcome 2 panel members to join in the questioning today. First of all, to my immediate left is Steve Schink, who is the Dean of College Relations and Development at North Idaho College, and also Lloyd Marsh, who is a member of the faculty at North Idaho College in the field of physical sciences. And I shall ask Steve Schink to commence the questioning.
Thank you, Tony. Norm, I wonder if we could begin by establishing some background for our discussions. Would you tell us a little bit more about exactly what an events or a convention center is?
Well, there's 2 different designs for a convention center or an event center. There is the arena concept, which for most of your viewers will be familiar with, is built along the lines of the Spokane Coliseum. Then the other style is a convention center, and that essentially is a large flat floor with walls and a ceiling and a roof. We chose to go in the local area with an arena, and the reason why we did that was we found that an arena had more opportunities. It was more of a multiple use facility than a convention center. In an arena, you can have horse shows, equestrian events, you can have rodeos, you can have basketball, wrestling, musical events, and you can also have conventions, and you can also have exhibitions. So an arena is truly a multiple use facility, and so that's why, after much study and discussion, we decided that that was the best facility to offer to the Kootenai County taxpayers.
We've got some of the what. Now I wonder if we could look a little bit at the why. The reason a community, any community, is interested in building either the convention style or the event style center. Is it for entertainment purposes, or is it for business, economic development purposes, or a mixture of both?
Well, it has many phases to it. It has an economic development aspect to it. It has a political, a religious, social quality to it, as well as just merely an entertainment quality to it. Every growing community goes through a lot of different phases in its capital expenditures, its infrastructure. I guess that's the new buzzword. I mean, you have your development of your storage system. You're paving your roads. You're building your police force up and your jail and all of these types of things. I-90 was completed. All of these events, the recreational facilities for tourists has doubled within the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's incredible the growth that this county's experienced. And part of the infrastructure of any growing, complex, diverse community is the option of creating one of these facilities. And we felt it was time for us, it was time for Kootenai County to step forward in a very substantial economic way and to seek permission from its taxpayers to build a structure of this nature.
Lord Marsh.
Well, now that we've sort of looked at the what and the why, I'm interested in the how. And how does something like this start? Who initiates it, and how do you get the ball rolling and the committee members identified and actually get to work?
Well, that's an interesting story. You got to go back to one person. You got to go back to Barb Renner. Barbara is a remarkable human being. Barbara is the manager at the fair. And when she stepped aboard, I think it was almost 10 years ago, the budget for the North Idaho Fair was $30,000. That was the total budget.
Incredible.
All of the operations came out of that sum of money. Today, that's around $300,000. So she has, by her physical presence and her imagination and the support of a very talented fair board, she has tenfold increased the use and the capacity of the fair as it presently exists. In 1991, typical of Barb and the members of the board, they had a plan done. They had a study by Bullock and Smith, who are professionals in this area, to give a plan for the future development of that acreage that we know as the Kootenai County Fairgrounds. And one of their recommendations was that there should be a convention center or an arena-style structure. And then we had another group by the name of Markin, who are economic specialists in these. And Markin laid out the pros and cons and the types of events that would use either one of these facilities. And their conclusion was that there was more economic benefit to this multiple-use facility called an arena. In 1992, I went to the fair, as I do every year. I'm very much of a fan of fairs. And I was presented with a questionnaire about, do you think we should have an arena or a convention center, and are you interested in the future of the facility out there? And of course I said I was, and I said that I would certainly volunteer if something like that came up. I'm almost a compulsive volunteer person, as you know. And so lo and behold, later on I got a letter in the mail from Don Fries, a member of the faculty of North Idaho College, as well as a member of the Fair Board, and inviting me and others to attend a meeting that was kindly hosted by Hecla Company, just a short distance from the fairgrounds. And so we all met out there, and we started getting to know one another, and it was a very remarkable group, and it's a group of people, some of which I've known for years and admired. Don Johnson, former mayor of Coeur d'Alene, a distinguished member of this community. Frank Henderson, formerly a member of the county commissioners, and I think truly one of the great public servants that this county's ever had. And it was people of this quality that attended this meeting, and I was delighted and honored to be a member of that group. This was a broadly based group. We had professionals. Jack Riggs is a doctor here in town and a native of Coeur d'Alene. Myself on the professional side, there was many businessmen, and there were people who were political in nature, such as Frank Henderson, and then people that were in other occupations or housewives or people of that nature. So we had a very representative group that shared their concerns and their aspirations for the future, and it was this group then that took the Bullock and Smith report and the Markham report, designed what we felt would be the best facility for North Idaho and Kootenai County specifically, and presented that to the Fair Board. Now it's the Fair Board's responsibility to decide in what manifestation to take that to the county commissioners, and of course up to the county commissioners to what to do from that point forward.
Just a little bit of a follow-up. Now, of course, this will require funding. I mean,
Yes.
so is it envisioned that it will be public funding?
Yes, it will be.
Bond issue of the
Yeah.
taxpayers?
We
to
immediately
support?
ruled out the tooth fairy. Yeah, we're gonna.
Right.
We think that as we looked at it, and we did look at alternate funding, and as we looked at it, probably the only way to do this would be through bonding. The final cost of this structure that we had the architectural workups for, and we had a model built by an architect here in town, would be about $9.6 million. And if you took that $9.6 million with the very low interest rates that you have at the present time, and you amortize that bond over a 15-year period, it cost approximately $24 for a person who owns the typical $100,000 value home in Kootenai County.
Mm-hmm.
So we felt that that was a real bargain.
I have some questions, Norm, that have to do with other communities. I'm always sensitive to other communities that are watching the program, other than just the local interest that we have in some of these issues. I am sure there are other communities that are our size or larger, and we've indicated that communities that have 30 or 40,000 may want to get involved in this kind of thing. I know among your studies or things you did is you went and looked at other communities. In fact, you, as a committee, flew and did that. Would you share with communities in Montana, Washington, or Canada what other communities are doing and what are some of the things they should look at?
I'd be happy to share that with you. We had a very interesting trip. There was 6 of us. I'd like to mention who they were. I have that right here. It was myself, Jack Riggs, Don Johnson, Don Fries, John Kozma, Bob Brashares, and myself. And Jacqueline Seed, one of the very good corporate citizens of Kootenai County, kindly lent us for a day their Cessna 8-passenger 2-engine aircraft with a pilot. And from here we flew to Great Falls. Great Falls has a convention center, and they have ice arenas, and we spent quite a bit of time there talking to them about the good and the bad of their facility and their plans for remodeling and how they got their funding and things of that nature. Their funding, all of these facilities got funding from a different place. Their funding came principally from the federal government. We're not going to be so fortunate as that because those federal programs are since gone. But they principally got the idea of having a convention center because they wanted entertainment for their children during the winter, and they wanted ice skating and things of that nature. And so it was originally a group that wanted ice skating, and then it became ice skating in the summer, and then they've used this facility for a whole variety of things, state basketball tournaments and wrestling tournaments and, Western entertainment and a variety of things like that. Their design was, the design of their facility, although it looked nice from the outside, was not distinguished in its internal features. So we took note of that. And then from there we flew to Billings, Montana, and they have what's called the Metra Center. It's a much more elaborate facility, and it can house up to 11,000 people. It's huge. It's very similar in feel and size to the Spokane Coliseum. That was built principally with county and city money. And it also had an ice rink, but was not in as much use as the ice rink in Great Falls. And it was a true arena. The Great Falls was more of a convention center type of structure, although it did have the ice skating events in it. And as we were there, they were moving Def Leppard, I believe, is a national band, and they were moving those facilities out, and they were bringing a basketball court in. They were going to have the annual Montana-Wyoming All-Star basketball game the following day. So it was a very heavily used facility, and a very good facility. And the third stop in our trip was in Minot, North Dakota, And Minot is a small community of 35,000 people, and within 100 miles driving area, I wouldn't think there would be another 40 to 50,000 people. And then there's Minot Air Force Base, a Strategic Air Command B-52 base. And that's all there is there. There were 2 facilities in that town that could be classed as big convention centers, but theirs was a huge convention center with a small arena on the side, and they had 10,000 square feet under one roof, and they had in this complex, and that's where they hold the North Dakota State Fair. In that whole complex, they had 4 different ice arenas, and they said that the ice arenas were the initial force for construction of their facilities, similar to Great Falls. So, and another stop that was made that I didn't get a chance to was another group went to Yakima, which was another facility that was not funded by local tax dollars. I think it was funded by state dollars. And it is very similar to the one that we have designed, and it does not have ice, and it pays for itself within the 2nd year of operation. The other 3 facilities that I mentioned, because of the ice and the expense of the heating and the cooling projects and the huge equipment and the apparatus that you have to have for ice, none of those facilities in their operating budgets are able to make ends meet.
Steve Shink.
Norm, it would seem to me that in Minot, North Dakota, you can get ice without a convention center. Was that built to keep it from blowing away?
You know, oddly enough, I spoke to them about that. They indicated to me, the director of their facility indicated to me that there was no ice skating culture, so to speak, or there was no social group that ice skated because there was no large bodies of water nearby, and that their ice skating now has been there long enough, now that they're doing the 2nd generation of ice skating there, and there is a real culture of people who curl, which is the Canadian game where you throw big rocks at either end of the... and for ice skating, all types of ice skating, junior hockey, pee-wee hockey, senior hockey. So there's been this whole culture of ice skating that's been created as a result of their activities at that facility.
You looked at facilities on your trip, and it sounds to me that given the size of the investment, that's probably not something in a small to medium-sized community that private enterprise is going to be able to put up. So you're looking at public funding to build a facility. But did you see any facilities that are privately run? In other words, the building is owned by the community, but the operation is leased to a vendor.
No. The only free enterprise quality to any of these structures that we saw were the refreshments. The hot dog and the popcorn and the beer and wine in some of those facilities. Those were on a free enterprise basis in Billings. But that was, well, yes, and in Minot.
So the operation of the facility is also public.
Yes.
Do they often cross governmental lines, city, county together who jointly operate?
Each one of them was different, and all of them had multiple uses to it. The Great Falls was city and county budgets were involved. In Billings, it was city-county budgets were involved, and in Minot, it was city and state budgets were involved. Which, interestingly, because the state arbitrarily chose Minot for its state fair, which is kind of an interesting thing for a state to do, not to use the capital for that, but to use a small town like Minot.
Lloyd Marsh.
When you do the surveys and the studies, as part of the survey, is there any element of size? I mean, how do you determine what the seating capacity is going to be, how large the square footage in the area should be, and so forth? Does that come out as part of the original study, or something you have to look into?
Our experts, Bullock and Smith, helped us a lot in that. We had quite a bit of input and dialogue with Bullock and Smith professionals, what we wanted for this community and what this community could reasonably support by way of a facility. Now in Spokane, they're building a facility that has a fixed seating of 13,500, I believe. Our fixed seating will be 5,000. So we downsized because we have a smaller population base. And there's also a question of cost there. The larger your facility, the greater the cost. So through that process of all of the members of this board and our backgrounds and our views of the future of this wonderful community and the costing issues that we had to deal with, and we finally came down that we felt that this facility at this size at this point in time was as good as we could come up with collectively.
Are you building in any potential for growth? In other words, could the facility be expanded at a later time?
It's hard to expand one of these facilities and correctly build it structurally.
So you'd
This
like to
is-
get it right the first time?
Yeah, and you do oversize a little bit for that reason. In the Metro in Billings, we'll go back to that for example, the director there had been there for, I would say, 6 or 7 years, and it's been full 4 times in his memory. So I mean, it's correctly sized for that community because it's larger than its present needs. We think that this facility is a little larger, and that we're not going to fill it up all the time. In fact, we'll probably fill it up very infrequently. But as time goes on, and as this community develops, becomes more sophisticated, and there's more and more demands placed on that, and more people to attend these events, that we will start in 5-10 years to start filling that place up properly. But there was a little oversize built into it.
Norm, we've spent a lot of time on the program talking about what it does for communities as far as the kind of events you can have. And in the case of North Dakota, you gave an example where it even may change a lot of the hobbies within the community because new sports or new activities that the whole community can get involved in. And we've even talked about bringing events to the community. And of course, how are you going to pay for all this? But what we haven't addressed yet is what it does as an economic impact to the community, the kind of funds. I'm sure your experts talked about the economic impact.
Yes, and not only did Markan, M-A-R-K-A-N, and that group, they're professionals at this, not only did they do a study of that at the preliminary stage, we had another study done by, I want to get his name right, excuse me just a minute, Charles Harris. He is a PhD and economist from Moscow, and he did a study for us, and a very good one, and he used a lot of their information, but he brought it up to current. If you'll follow me along a little bit, I'll try and explain what he was talking about. It seems that for about every $1 million that you bring into a community, you generate about 36 jobs. And there is the potential, when this thing is moving along, as we envision it to move along, that there will be approximately $7.5 million of monies generated every year for this facility, because of this facility. So that's about 280 jobs, which is a lot of jobs. That's a lot of jobs for people in Idaho. That's one of the economic considerations. Another one of the economic considerations that all the fairs that we attended, or all the arenas that we attended, talked about, and we also had Dr. Harris address himself, is how much does somebody from out of county spend when they get in this county to attend an event? And they will normally spend, a person that's going to come here and spend a day here and stay here will, and this is very conservative numbers, roughly $12 for food and drink, and he will spend approximately $60 in lodging. So every time you have an event that's attractive enough for one person to come in from out of town, that's $72 of cash input into the county economics. So, and it looks like that the income from this facility, just the income to the facility itself, would be, the top of that would be about $282,000. And our operating expenses would be probably 50% of that when it's full and being used very frequently, and so that you would have a potential surplus of around $112,000 that you can do other things with, improve the rest of the fair facilities, or put into a sinking fund for repairing of roof or whatever you choose.
Steve Sheen.
Norm, what's the biggest obstacle usually in a community to building a convention center?
Well, in every community, you have windows of opportunity to do things of this nature. And the biggest obstacle is the feeling of the taxpayers about themselves, about their economic future, and their own personal visions of their future along with the future of Kootenai County or whichever area that you're planning one of these facilities. And the problem is the appropriate articulation so that you can share your vision of Kootenai County in such a way that the taxpayers will buy into that vision and go ahead and vote for your particular bond election. Now, there's a lot of politics in that. I mean, there's no good time to ask for money from taxpayers. But this is knowing that when it comes up and you have the momentum and we have the knowledge and we have the current estimates and the current budgets and we have good architectural plans and we have a good economy and we're looking into the future as being good for Kootenai County and good for Kootenai County businesses, we think that this task force that I was involved with thought this was an appropriate time.
Speaking of time, do you have a timeline for this issue to go before the voters?
No, we don't, and that's an interesting thing. A task force, with the exception of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, task force, by their own, almost by definition of their name, have a limited function over a limited period of time. We made our presentation to a joint meeting of the Fair Board and the county commissioners. And when we did that, our job was done. And it's in the hands of the Fair Board and the county commissioners now.
Lord Marshall, about 1 minute.
Okay, and just in 30 seconds or less, Norm, can you? What are you optimistic? Is the board, the group that put this together? Are you optimistic? You think you can pull it off? And
oh, I think
make it
so.
go?
Yes, I do. You have to be intelligent about these matters, and you have to correctly articulate your vision, and it has to be a good vision, and you have to have all the answers, all the questions answered, and I think we do. And if this was placed before the board or the taxpayers, I'm confident the taxpayers would accept this and go forward with it.
On that note, we must bring the program to conclusion. Norm, thank you for being with us today, and this has been most informative. And on behalf of the panel and our staff, we do express, again, our appreciation.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest has been Norm Gissel, speaking of how one puts together community convention centers or event centers. And I would like to invite you to be with us again next week when we'll discuss yet another subject. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Telemedia Services on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.